Hi all, me again. Well, it's been quite a while. We've just got a puppy and I'm taking the puppy down all the time. A lot of fun. So I haven't really had much time for philately. Today we're going to do something slightly different. Today in Israel we are having Holocaust Remembrance Day. Now in Israel, Holocaust Remembrance Day is different from other countries because here we hold it basically 1 week before the Declaration of Independence. A week ago, I gave a lecture to friends from England, from America, from Canada, Israel, all over the world. And it's all about the Jewish stereotype on postcards. I'm presenting it here for you all. I hope you like it.
So Lawrence, I'm sure you're well known to almost everybody who's on the lecture today, but introduce yourself and the floor is yours, and I will stop sharing my screen and you can turn over to sharing yours.
No problem. Can everyone see my screen? I assume so.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay.
Yes, we can see it.
And why doesn't it move? Why doesn't it move? Okay. So people want to know who I am. And I'd like to say that's an excellent question. What is the difference between a good question and an excellent question? A good question is something that you don't know how to answer. An excellent question is something that you know how to answer. You already have a slide. So this is about me. I was not born in Israel, although I've been in Israel now since 1977, over 2/3 of my life. And I started collecting stamps like most people when I was a kid. My father was a stamp collector before me. And if I'm talking too fast, well, please say stop. And as you can hear from my Southern African accent, I was born in Rhodesia, and there began anti-Semitism, shall we say. As far as philately is concerned, I have a FIP gold medal with multiple awards. The last gold medal that I received was in Hungary last year. Received once again a prize for treatment. And the first time actually I won for my 8 frame was in 2015 in Germany. And for me, it was a great feeling when they say, and the winner goes to the Jewish homeland. And that was in Germany. And my very, very good friend, Yoram, was there with me. And we were able to celebrate together, and it was a great time. And apart from that, I also have a blog and talk about the stories behind the stamps and not the stamps themselves. And I'm also have a YouTube channel, and I talk about, once again, the stories behind the stamps, because I want to bring more and more people into the fold of collecting. And I want people to understand what you can learn from stamps. So I have actually at the moment over 350 stalkers. It has won a few awards, not great awards, but there are today exhibitions only for this media. I do it on my own. Don't want anyone to help me. Haven't asked for help because I don't want to be beholden to any specific timetable or whatever. When I have time, I now have a 5-year-old daughter, and she's letting me talk to you all at the moment. I wonder when she's going to come back here. And I also have a dog now who keeps barking at me when I try to give a talk. Fortunately, I'm on vacation now in Panama with my wife's family. And today, as I told you, we're going to talk about postcards. And I must be honest, I hate postcards. When people started talking to me about postcards was already in 2015 at the SM competition in Essen, basically. It was the ECTP championships. And people spoke then, Dutch people spoke to me about postcards. And I didn't like the idea. I really didn't like the idea. And I saw that a good friend of mine Hadi Or got gold medals with his postcards, and Moshe Rima got good medals for his postcards, and they have very good exhibits. But I never ever thought of doing it myself until my good friend Yoram said to me, write an article about what a Jew looks like. And I said, okay, I'll look for what a Jew looks like. And I realized that not many stamps. And that is when I decided to go into the world of investigating postcards. And this was barely 6 months ago. Now, as you know, Jew hatred is the oldest hatred in the world. We can even see it in the Bible, in the book of Purim, when Haman wanted to destroy all the Jews, and he was stopped, fortunately. We see it even then. And this is once called Jewphobia, which is basically a hatred of Jews, which is different from Islamophobia, which is not the hatred of Islam, but the fear of Islam, or it's not the fear of Islam, but the hatred of Islam. And Jewphobia was the fear of Jews. They changed it in 1879. The word became anti-Semitism. Now, the journalist discussed between which kind of terminology to use for Judenhaus, and he decided he was going to use the anti-Semitism because it gives a scientific-sounding word. Why did they use Semites, although Arabs are Semitic people? He decided because the Jews could speak many, many languages, and because they could speak many, many languages, including Arabic, would use the term anti-Semitism, and it stuck. It's even used today. These are the first anti-Semitic stamps that I found. They are stamps from Serbia from 1942. There was an anti-Semitic exhibition brought out by the Nazis, and this is one of the few times I'm going to talk about Nazis, because all the postcards I'm going to talk about today are pre-1920, except for one. And we can see here this exhibition, and if you look on my YouTube channel, you'll see that's where the OCR at the beginning was based. It is, you see this very, very anti-Semitic set. You see here at the top, and I can't use, unfortunately, I can't use my pointer. It doesn't really work here, but you can see the snake on the hand crushing the snake. And we see that in a lot of Nazi terminology, and today even pro-Arab Cinderella. We see here on the left-hand side, we see here Jew shielding his eyes from the sun, and another one, the one on the bottom left is anti-Sovietic, but the one on the right is basically, if you look there carefully, you can see it looks like Solomon bringing down the temple, pillars of the temple. That was the earliest I found, and that is beginning of 1942. Now, these actually, the difference between a stamp and a postcard is that with a stamp, even today, with a stamp, you can't just print any stamp that you want to. You have to get permission from the UPU, and the UPU has set guidelines on what kind of stamp you to use. And quite often, if we know from 1960s and 1967, 68, stamps sent from Israel to European countries were returned because they were against UP regulations in the eyes of the East Europeans. But a stamp, you need to get permission. UPU is stringent. There's a stamp with a snake. It's very, very anti-Semitic, and it wouldn't pass the UPU. But the Nazis had control over most of Europe, and obviously, if they wanted to, they could use that stamp to send anywhere, because once it's in Eastern Europe, controlled by Nazis, they can do whatever they want to. The same today with Arab stamps that are very, very anti-Israel. When it's sent within the UPU, it should be returned, but very often it's not. But with the Arab Postal Union, it can be sent anywhere they want to. And same thing. I've actually never seen a true postally used item from this set. But Jews were often forced to wear, as I said before, the idea of anti-Semitism is not new at all. It began thousands of years ago. We even know that the anti-Semitism, as we spoke about Purim, it happened in someone asking me something? someone's on telephone.
בזום אם אני צריך לחזור אלייך מחר.
So we'll wait for him.
ביי.
Yaakov,
Yaakov,
can you put your microphone on mute, please? Okay, can you put your microphone on mute, please? Okay, let's continue. Okay, now many anti-Semitic laws were passed against Jews, and the question is, how do you know who is a Jew? During Nazi times, they used to force Jews to wear what you call the famous yellow star, but not in medieval times. We were forced to wear a comical hat. And here we see on the stamp on the right, this item for Cook Islands, you can see the comical hat. This is actually an item from the Jesus' circumcision. Another item we see here are Jews. This is an item from the Vatican, and we see the Jews with their comical hats. And another item here we see this emblem from the town of Česká Trubova. Now, this may seemingly be anti-Semitic, because if you have a look at the nose of the man, it's the real Jewish nose, as it was. But this item is not specifically anti-Semitic. When I investigated this idea, I asked why the emblem was like that. They told me the story. The story is that in those days, about 800 years ago, a man's word was his word. A certain person was put in charge of the town's emblem, and he was told, he said to them, "I will guard it with my life." And one day, the emblem went missing. He and his wife searched high and low for it, and they couldn't find it. So the town said, "Okay, you were going to guard it with your life. You're going to end your life." He was sitting obviously in jail, waiting to be put to death by gallows. And he was looking out the window, watching them build the gallows, and he was supposed to be put to death. And all of a sudden, his wife looked out the window, not in the gallows, obviously. His wife looked out the window and saw a rooster, and in the rooster's talons was something. She went and had a look, and there was the town emblem. So they decided to make the rooster the town emblem. Now, why the Jewish head? It turns out that was a sign of respect, because the noble people in the town at that time were Jews. And that is what they looked like. They had to have that special hat, and that's why that was there. And then notice how they looked like. So it's not specifically anti-Semitic. And that is the end of talking about stamps today. Now we are going to say, we know that we are Jews and we are unwelcome. Here is a postcard, and now we're going to talk about postcards. Here's a postcard brought out in Vienna in the early 20th century, 1905. And here we see something by the philosopher called Seneca. Now, Seneca lived from 4 BC to 65 AD. And what he says here, I'm not going to read the German to you because my German accent is awful, but he described Jews as the wicked people, the criminal people. And this is what the postcard says. The customs of this wicked people, the Jews, have really become so strong that they've spread to all countries. The vanquished have imposed their laws on the victors. Now, this is what Seneca said over almost 2,000 years ago. It was already then anti-Semitism was a part of culture. When we talk about anti-Semitism literature, we have Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens. And Charles Dickens said, if he wants to portray a wicked person, it has to be a Jew. We see the character Fagin here, who's taking all his treasures and putting them into a hole, and Oliver is looking on. Now, Fagin was referred to as someone who, as I said before, someone who's very, very wicked. He used to take young children who were poor, who were homeless, take them into his home and force them to be pickpockets. And Oliver Twist was obviously one of them. And anyone who wants to read the story can read it. So there doesn't say anything here of any interest, but Fagin was, this postcard was published in this, Oliver Twist was published in the mid-18th century, and there were already Jews in England at that time. Jews were kicked out of England in 1290, and they weren't allowed to return until 1652. We are disliked basically because of our customs. And here we see a circumcision. Now this postcard, you can see there, it's the Jew with his big nose and a huge scissors is about to do a circumcision. And the top left, we can see a line in French saying, just a little retouch. Now, this was written, this postcard was animated by a Swiss person who did postcards for Algerians. And this is from the beginning of the 19th century, of the 20th century, but up to 1910. The very little kid is a bit scared. I'm playing him. And another one about circumcisions is we can see here. Okay, he's going to have his Brit Milah at the moment, the circumcision, and it's when they say Abel gets his first 10% cut. Today we're in Passover, and some of us are eating matzahs, and my daughter has just come to drink some of my water. Hello. And here we can see the matzah ponim, or the matzah face. Now this postcard was published in 1905, and you can see it from the bottom. And I haven't found anything about this publisher, JAA and AA.
I didn't finish.
Come say hello. Come say hello. Yeah, you're already here. Say hello. Wave to everybody. Okay. Now go to your mommy, okay? A funny thing about this particular postcard is that I saw this and I purchased it, and the person doesn't send to Israel, so yeah. Like a shot. Like a shot. Okay. How can I resist that? Sorry, how can I resist that? This person didn't send to Israel, so I asked to send it to a friend of mine in the States, and they sent it to me in November, and unfortunately it hasn't yet arrived, so I assume that it's lost. So if anybody sees this, I'm interested in one. Now, being unwelcome and different customs, we are not welcome in many places. And one of the places was this Kulner Hof. Kulner Hof was a hotel in Frankfurt. And they published postcards in the 1890s. And we see here a Jew being kicked out of the hotel. We can see his foot here on the foot of the hotel, and a Jew with once again, the nose being kicked out. Now, the person who owned Kulner Hof was very, very anti-Semitic, of course. He became a member of the Nazi Party in the late 1920s, and he prided himself on having the only Jew-free hotel in Germany, in Frankfurt. There are a few postcards like this, slightly different, but as you can see, this was written in 1897. Now, as I explained earlier in the questions to Aryeh Schwartz, no one needed permission to do postcards. You could make as many postcards as you want to. Kulner Hof was a hotel. They had the means to publish as many postcards that they want to, and they used it there. In theory, there should be many of these postcards, but I haven't seen many of them at all. They're actually very, very difficult to come by and well sought after. Prices can range $100 and upwards. The island of Borkum is an island in the north of Germany, and they prided themselves on being an island that is totally Jew-free. No Jews were allowed there. Here we see a Jewish family not being allowed into the hotel. And the statement underneath there, yeah, please go to mommy.
Kiss. And a hug. Good.
Good.
I want to take you.
Yeah, I'm talking to people that can all see us, okay? Okay. What they say here is those who are flat-footed are not allowed here. Now here we come to America, our great friend and whatever, and some people said that up to until 1910, private people were allowed to send postcards. And this was a place offering services that they were asking for people to come and purchase land in something called Falmouth, Massachusetts. And we can see on the left-hand side, a carefully restricted community. The code word carefully restricted basically means white Christians. No Jews were allowed. Here's another example. Miami Beach was created, the town of Miami Beach was created by an entrepreneur, and he wanted this area to be for his well-to-do friends, who were also white Catholics, white Christians, and so on. And the private beach shows that it was only for those kind of people, not for Jews. And here we have an item from Dallas, the Dallas Park Hotel in Miami, Florida. And it's a seemingly nice one. And this postcard is actually made of linen. And here we see on the other side, we see here, every appointment designed to meet requirements of discriminating clientele. Jews are not allowed. We're not welcome, as I said before. Here we see a postcard published in Vienna, and it says the homunculus exodus of Jews. Now, what is a homunculus? A homunculus is a Latin word and basically means a small person. When we talk about a small person, when it refers to Jews, they refer to a homunculus when it refers to Jews as a small person. Quite often we see postcards talk about the kleiner Cohen, in other words, a small Cohen. Apparently, Jews from Eastern Europe were shorter than those in America and in Germany, and it was one of the stereotypes of Ostjuden, in other words, the Eastern Jews. And here we see it. The Exodus. They were so happy they wanted the Jews to get out because Jews were not welcome. You'll see more examples of being unwelcome in a short while. Now let's go into a little bit of the stereotypes of the Jews, of the way we look. We discussed the Jewish nose, and this postcard published in the early 1900s, 1905, because with postcards, it's very, very difficult to know when it was actually published. Why is that? Because there's no, as I spoke earlier, there's no catalog that says, okay, this is when it was published. But until 1905, the UPU came out with a regulation that said postcards should have an undivided back. In other words, you wrote the message on the front. As you can see here, I am well shaken up a bit. Here we can see it because the writing was on the front of the postcard. On the back where the stamp went was only where you put the address. So that we know that when you see those kind of items, it is normally printed, published before 1905. In the States, you also see them in 1906, sometimes 1907, but basically it was a requirement up to 1905. After that, we get undivided back, so we know that it was after 1905. So this one was up to 1905. Now, this item was published by Mr. Bacchus as a set of stereotypes. The same item appears with Chinese stereotypes or Oriental stereotypes, and the people, the face on the left and the right are different. Now, the Jewish stereotype, the nose, as we've seen already, is very, very prominent. It's not new. It's been, as you can see, it was already in the early 1900s, late 1900s, sorry. It was also in the previous years. Barbara Streisand was very proud of her Jewish nose. She said it's part of my, part of who I am. She decided never to do a nose job. It was part of her. And now we'll see some more of these. This is very, very exaggerated nose. This is printed by, this is the artist here was somebody named Frederick Cavalier. I haven't found any information as to why he printed this kind of nose, but this is a set of stereotypes, and here we actually see another stereotype. that we can't speak, that we speak English with an accent. Instead of, well, who knows, K-N-O-W-S, who knows, he said, well, who knows, who knows. Another example, unfortunately, my example of this is, as you can see, very, very torn. And it's printed by the same person, the same publisher. And this is also in the bottom right, you can see the number 6338, because it's also part of a series. And once again, partial Yiddish here. Very similar postcard. The same author, artist, the same thing. These are all published about 1910, something like that. Now, the Jewish nose is so prominent in people's mindset that in Indochina, there was the Halong Bay, which is today part of Vietnam. Indochina became Vietnam, or Vietnam, yeah. And we here see that the Hamlin challenge was called Zhuave. In other words, the Jew. The Jewish head with a brick nose. And you see that with the island on the rock formation on the right-hand side. Today, when it became Vietnam, they didn't like the name Le Zhuave, and today it's called the man's head. Now we're going to talk about horns. Part of my upbringing said when I was at school, my first years I was at a private school where there were many Jews who went to that school. But when from 13 years old in Bulawayo, we all went to public schools. There were not enough Jews to have a Jewish day school after the age of 30, after the age of 12. And a good friend of mine came home to study because I was one of the top in the class at that stage, and he wanted me to help him with his homework. And he came over to meet me, and my father came home from a rough day at work, and my friend turned to my father and said to me, "Tell me, when is Lawrence's horns going to come out?" I looked at him and I said, "What?" Sorry? Okay. I was totally shocked. I was totally shocked. And I forgot about this until my good friend Yoram asked me to write this article. I'd forgotten about this incident. And I turned to my father and said to him, "Do you know what he's talking about?" My father said, "No." My friend said to me, "Look, we all know that you're the devil. Jews are the devil. So when your horn's going to come out?" I said to him, "You know what? Please leave my home now." And I actually never spoke to the fellow again. Where does it come from? In the book of Exodus 34 to 35, or Sefer Shmot, there's a line that says, "Moshe lo yada ki keren or panav betvara ito," which translates to, Moses' face was radiant and keren or, because he had spoken with God. Now, someone who translated that from Hebrew to English translated it as the horns on Moses' face, because a keren or a karen is also a horn. And as we can see in Michelangelo's Moses, we have horns on his head. And this is a statue in Rome even today. This postcard, this picture was taken in the early 19th century, in the early 20th century. This postcard itself was from 1905. And you can see another example over here. Here the horns are very, very prominent. We all have distorted bodies. I don't know many people whose bodies are distorted like that, but here we can see written in French at the bottom, a market just like in Paris. Now, Philip Neri was a Frenchman living in Algeria, and he did many, many postcards for the Algerians. This was early 1920s. And here we can look at this. Now, we spoke about this earlier. The earlier previous lecture spoke about this. Here we have Jews who are supposed to be well dressed. They try to look like British people with their top hats and their umbrella. We see that often. But here we can see the prominent nose and the distorted body. Now, Marienbad is a spa town, a spa city in the Czech Republic, and many Jews went there because many Jews had money. They went there. They very often stayed at the same hotel, and people made these anti-Semitic, who they didn't think were anti-Semitic. They thought they were basically comic, but in retrospect, they are very anti-Semitic. There is one other city, Carlsbad, which had similar ones. I decided not to bring all of them. I'm just giving you guys a taste of everything. So when the time runs out at 4 o'clock today, in 2 hours, you won't say to me, look, you're getting bored. I'm sure that before then, you're almost saying it's time to stop. Or Colin. Okay. And there are many types which show how Jews are distorted. I just decided to show just a little bit of everything. I am not going to show Nazi postcards today. There are not that many Nazi anti-Semitic postcards. There are a few, but I want to continue with the early 20th century, late 19th century, so that we can see what there are. And believe you me, there are literally hundreds of postcards, if not thousands. Peot. And Mr. Thierry was a German artist who brought out a set of stamps. He was an artist of animals. And here we can see the peot, or the side locks, and the yarmulke. When we talk about postcards, the difference between postcards and stamps is that with stamps, we have a catalog, we know when they were published, we have information about them. Very often we can find out who was the artist. We can find the information is there. When talking about postcards, or shall we say deltiology, one of the things is finding information about the postcard. Why did they print it? When it was printed? Who was the publisher? Because it's not, most of them are unknown. As we said before, they're printed privately, and you could publish them everywhere. And you can see the graphic here and whatever. Some of the items I'm showing you are, shall we say, I don't know how rare they are, but they're very difficult to find. This item, I saw, this is only one of two that I've seen. One wasn't sold, and I approached the person 3 years after the auction, and he still had it with him, and I managed to purchase it. The fact that there are people in America, now they're going once again back to America, and here we can see that this was printed by the same company as earlier, also in 1905, by once again also JA and AA, and I haven't found any information on those JA and AA. And there, once again, when you talk about postcards, there are various sites that you can see the names of the publishers and quite often information, and you can find out who JA and AA is. But in every one of them that I found, and they always say JAA and AA. They never show you what the names are. I'm still investigating because, as I said, I only went on this path about 6 or 7 months ago, and I'm still learning. Hopefully, I'm trying to do at the moment, I'm trying to do a single frame exhibit, and I wanted to exhibit in Thailand at the end of this year, but unfortunately for single frames, they don't have a postcard category. My good friend, Dr. Les Glassman, who spoke earlier, wanted it very much to take it there, but obeys me. Here we see another example of not speaking English with the German or Yiddish accent, the why not. We've seen many examples of that. That is why at this stage I only decided to print one of them. Once again, here we see something that was printed in America before 1905, and I also haven't found any information of EB&E, but I will find it. Now, we've discussed up to now the way we looked, and now we'll talk a little bit about the way we behave. I see I've still got time. Unfortunately, when you've got this, hang on, wait a minute, maybe I can put this down. I want to see how I can minimize this. No, I can't. Okay. Sorry about that. So about that, I'll get it up again. I pressed the wrong button, so give me a moment. And share screen. You can see the screen again, right? Nod if you can't. Okay, I can see nodding. Okay. We are concerned at some stage we are considered greedy. Now, why is it not going? Okay. We spoke earlier about England and in being in literature. We spoke about Charles Dickens and Oliver Twist. And now we'll speak a little bit about Shakespeare and the Merchant of Venice. And one of the characters in Merchant of Venice was a fellow by the name of Shylock. Now, Shylock was a moneylender, and we'll speak a little bit more about the moneylender in this case. And Shylock was a moneylender, and he loaned money to a colleague named Antonia. Now, Shylock he didn't like Antonia at all. And apparently Antonia had spat on him at one stage. He had hit him at one stage in public and spoken badly about Judaism, and he disliked Antonia. Antonia fell on bad times and came to Shylock looking for a loan. And Shylock said to him, I'll give you a loan, but if you default, I'll take my pound of flesh. Just think of it that if you default, he's going to take a whole part of your arm. Unfortunately, Antonia did default in his loan, and Shylock went and demanded his pound of flesh. Today, he did everything and anything he could to get his money back. Shylock disliked when Antonia came back to him and said that he couldn't default, and he defaulted on his loan, and Shylock could have asked for giving him more time, but he was very, very angry with Antonia at that stage because Shylock's daughter had fallen in love with a good friend of Antonia and had converted to Christianity. And he did everything, he did anything he could to get his money back. In the end, he forfeited his money, but that is how the story continues. And I would encourage you people to watch The Merchant of Venice, read up on them. But the strange thing is, as I said to you earlier, there were no Jews in England between 1290 and 1652. And The Merchant of Venice was published in the late 1600s. In other words, about something like 1596, 1597. Shakespeare hadn't seen a Jew in over 300 years. He didn't live 300 years, but he didn't know what a Jew looked like. Yet he still brought out someone that was an evil person, Shylock, who could only be a Jew. Today in America, if you call someone a Shylock, it's not exactly a nice word. But our flag is money. And if you have a look at the fellow on the left-hand side of the bottom, he has openly anti-Semitic features, the nose, the distorted body, and the evil look on his face. And our friend, you can see it here, our gold, our silver, openly anti-Semitic. Another example, this person has a lot of money and he's still grabbing onto it. This is actually a German postcard from the 1915s. And the Schnorrer. Now the Schnorrer is, Schnorrer, here we can see at the bottom it's written Der Schnorrer. A Schnorrer is someone who's always asking for money. Please give me money. I don't want to have any, don't want to give you any, but I want you to give me. In the 1940s or the 1930s, there were yeshivot in Jerusalem who very often sent out printed addresses to people to donate money for them. And today they're referred to as Schnorr letters, asking for money. Because we're not allowed to work in many professions, quite often we turn to money lending. In ancient times, in medieval times, Jews were money lenders for many, many reasons, not only because there are many professions that they couldn't do, but quite often because the interest that they charged in those days was less than what the Catholics charged. So many people, including clergymen, turned to Jews to loan money because the interest was less. But here we see it was taken further and further, and here we see money to loan at only 10% per month. From there to pawnbroker, it's slightly different, because a pawnbroker, for those of us who don't know, is you give something. For example, I can give my watch. I can say to go into a pawnbroker and say like this, suppose the watch is worth $1,000, and he'll give me $100 for it, and he'll keep it. If I default on it, like with Shylock, he'll want, if I default on it, it becomes his. And then he can sell it for $500 or $600. Now, how do we know that this is Jewish? Because the name Cohen. For in anti-Semitic or these kind of postcards, we can see that there are no names like Cohen and Levi, which are openly Jewish names. When I mentioned earlier, decliner Cohen, small Cohen, obviously referring to a Cohen. This person here was trying to get money to propose to his beloved or whatever. I think he's already dressed up for the wedding. This is a French postcard brought out in 1924, and basically it was a left-leaning party that wanted to rid all of the Chamber of Deputies of profiteers from the Great War. The First World War in those days was not referred to as the First World War, obviously, because the Second World War hadn't yet happened. It was referred to as the Great Year. And in their eyes, there were mainly Jews who profited from the war. And we see here that they're chasing away Jews. Once again, 1924. The fünf Frankfurter, the five Frankfurters. Now here, these are the sons of Baron Rothschild, Baron Rothschild, who created a banking bank throughout Europe, very, very successful, but obviously many people didn't like it. Here we can see the smug faces on the Jews, trying the top hats, the three-piece coats and whatever, trying to fit in, but. And here we can see all the money in the world. On the left-hand side, we see the Jews hold the purse skins, and we have the peyot, the kippah, and the right-hand side, we hold the Jew hoarding the money to him, the miser. We rule the world. And we can see an example of a Jew holding onto the world, and underneath that, leur patrie, in other words, their homeland. This postcard is a French postcard brought on in the early 20th century, not long after Dreyfus affair, and it's from the Library anti-semitic. This came out in a series of, I think it was about 13 postcards, and this is number 2. Here we can see him clinging on. It actually looks like not really fingers, but talons clinging onto the entire world. The Gezelt means the miser. He has a Jew holding on to his money. I'm no Scotsman and I'm no Jew, but I draw the line sometimes. Why? Because he was asked to tip the basin, close the basin, to tip the basin. And he thought that they were talking about tip the basin, putting money there. This is a British postcard, and there's also came out in a series. The British had set out many, many postcards that were supposedly humorous. And humorous, obviously, in the eyes of the beholder. Shall I go on? We are very, very untrustworthy. If a person like this turned to you and said to you, with his hand held up, believe me, another, not believe me, but believe me, would you trust him? We are also considered the enemy. Le juif, voilà, l'ennemi. Strangely enough, it's written here, and when the person's pointing, he's pointing to the word Panama. I have no idea why Panama come. Maybe it's because at the moment I'm in Panama. I don't know. But Jews are considered the enemy. Although I took this image from Del Campo, the item I have at home, I did purchase this. You can see here the imagery, the Jew with the lion head or the sun, openly anti-Semitic. The Museum of Horrors. This is an item from the Dreyfus Affair. The Museum of Horrors was a series of postcards. There are a number of them. There was actually a postcard came out, about 51 postcards. It says here, this is number 6, obviously. There's a dagger there, le traiteur, in other words, the traitor. Dreyfus is depicted as a hydra. Hydra is something with multiple heads. And we can see here the snake. As we look to remember, I spoke about the Serbian stamps. The Serbian stamp, when there was a snake and was crushing the snake, same kind of imagery. And we also have a very, very similar imagery when referring to Arab Cinderella, when they want to be anti-Semitic. Many of the items from the Museum of Horrors showed either the Hydra or an octopus. In other words, its talons all over the world. I just wanted to do this because against Dreyfus himself. And it still goes on. Here we have a Jew, as you can see in the bottom bottom left-hand corner, with his big nose and his beard, the kippah, and we can see it's a Jew because the Magen David, and he's hitting there, he's building a tunnel, and the Arabic says, we're going to destroy all tunnels. And at the same time, he's building a tunnel underneath the Al-Aqsa Mosque. I promised I would be 45 minutes. I promised my good friend Yoram, and my 45 minutes are up. And just want to say that postcards can tell us a story, a beautiful story, and I'm enthralled with this section. And hopefully, I'll be able to create an exhibit. And as one, if you see anything like anything that may be of interest, you're more than welcome. I understand that the previous lecture, the professor had a postcard showing a map of Eastern Europe with a Jewish head. I've seen that postcard. I haven't yet managed to put my hand on it. As I said, there are many, many postcards which are very, very difficult to get. Very, very difficult to get. And here we have a QR code. This is to my YouTube channel, and I'm open to questions.